Hey, good morning, Matthew readers. I get to bring you a word for today's reading. I want to focus on chapter 7, verses 13 through 14. This is a passage that I've often heard used to defend the idea that Jesus is exclusive or it's hard to get into the kingdom of heaven. So here's the passage, and then I want to share a few thoughts. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Let me read it again. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. So again, I've heard this in my upbringing talked about as though Jesus is exclusive and he's sort of weeding people out. But remember, Jesus taught through object lessons. So when he talks about a gate, he's actually referring to physical places his audience would know about. Because every city, whether it was Jericho or Jerusalem, was surrounded by walls, and all of those walls had a gate, many gates in some cases. So if you look at the ruins in Jerusalem today, they're not from Jesus' day, they're a little bit later than that. But there are some gates that are very wide. They're meant to be sort of the broad entrance that many people could go through at once. You can ride your horse or your donkey through the gates. And there are some that are more narrow that you might have to look through, or you might have to dismount your animal to walk through, and you might have to go through with greater intent. So I wonder if what Jesus is doing is using this imagery about the gate to talk about how to live a life in the kingdom. And what he's saying is this: you can't actually go with the flow to get into the kingdom. I heard the leadership guru John Maxwell say one time that nobody ever drifts into health. And I think it's a similar concept here, that if you go by the wide gate, what you're doing is relying on the rush of the crowd or the current of the culture to lead you in the doors. And in my experience, the drift, my own personal drift, and the drift of society never actually leads me toward love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, any of these fruits of the Spirit. To actually resist what's in me, to resist my own selfishness, my pride, my desire for more, takes some resistance and intentionality. It requires work. It's that narrow gate. It means I have to go through this passageway and shed things and look harder to get in. So I wonder for you, what is the current you tend to ride? I mean, when you're not intentional about following Jesus or doing your own introspective, reflective work and repentance, where do you tend to drift? What does the current push you towards? And I love this line where he says, the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. It's so true. I mean, it's just too easy to drift into unhealth, physical, emotional, spiritual. The gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to divorce or impatience or financial debt. Those things are really easy to come by. We don't have to work hard to fall short in those ways. It's much harder to discipline ourselves to be kind and gentle and patient and loving and generous, and these things that we call virtue, that we cultivate. So I think what he's challenging us in this passage is don't just drift. I mean, don't just rely on where other people are going through the rush of the wide and broad gate. Don't trust that that will lead you to life in the kingdom, to the good life where he is king. That if you want to live in the way of Jesus and to apprentice or follow after him, you have to find the narrow gate and do the work to walk through and intentionally pursue that kingdom vision. He doesn't say here the doors are closed. He says both are open, but actually look for the narrow gate. Because if you just trust on the current of the culture to take you through the wide gate, you're much more likely to land in a place of destruction. So take a moment to think, where do I drift when I'm not intentional? Do I actually drift into the way of Jesus? For me, the answer is obviously no, never. I never drift that way. And what does it look like for me to find the narrow gate and to walk one foot in front of the next toward that gate, and Jesus on the other side who's inviting us to walk through.